Hi, and welcome to your first BTech 1 lecture for the semester. So I'd like to put it out there that this video is going to be unedited. I will upload it as is, so if I do stutter during my lecture, please bear with me. Okay? BTech 1 is basically building materials. That's the descriptive title for the course. Um, let's first run through our expected outcomes for the semester so that we see eye to eye kung ano yung i-expect nyo sa subject na to. Your building materials subject will basically explain to you the properties and composition of finishing materials, including their application and articulation in terms of the building envelope. Um, this subject will allow you to understand how the application, installation, fabrication, and maintenance methods and techniques relative to your building design and construction can be employed or will be employed. This will also teach you how to consider materials in terms of their applicability, practicability, and of course, functionality in accordance with the standard and uniform system of our specification. And finally, it's not really related to building materials per se, but one of the course outcomes of BTech 1, expected course outcomes of this subject is for you to be able to kind of be familiar with the language, the local language of the construction industry for you to be able to communicate better with your workers. Kasi, 'di ba, minsan kapag English yung conversation with laymen or laborers, foreman, mas mahirap ipaintindi at minsan kailangan familiar kayo with local terms. So this is, dadaanan natin yung isang part na yon for Building Technology 1. So with that being said, the course outcomes being said, let's now proceed with our first lecture. So this is Building Technology, the 16 divisions of construction specification. These 16 divisions compose the master list for which construction will proceed, how it will proceed, and what exactly is needed for your construction project to proceed. Next slide tayo. What is construction specification? So, ang construction specification po, basically, yan yung tinatawag natin na specs. Okay? It details the material, the method, the workmanship to be employed on site. It presents the manufacturer, limitation, and identity of the product, the hardware, all the finishes that you wish to install or use for your project. In a nutshell, a construction specification, or the specs as we call it, is the partner of your drawings. It is the binding element to your working drawings kasi it specifies how you want your drawings to be put or implemented in real life. Without the specifications, hindi mo exactly, no, hindi mo talaga maibibigay o maililay down sa mga tao kung ano yung gusto mong mangyari sa project mo. Now, there this is a case-to-case basis kasi first and foremost, kung tao mo sila ng matagal na alam na nila kung paano yung approach. But specs are a binding element in terms of kunwari may bago kang tao, tas kailangan niya maintindihan kung paano. And it also serves as a contract to your client na this is what I'm gonna put in your project. This is what I'm gonna use. So it's a binding element for your drawings and your actual construction. This master list is universal. So, in a sense, pwede mo siyang baguhin, but since it is a universal master list, it's widely understood. These 16 divisions, most likely, itatanong to sa board exam. I know I'm kind of redundant with my lectures kung ano yung mga lalabas sa board exam, but for some reason, this part of building technology, kailangan talaga nating daanan. And also because it's part of your course syllabus. So, next slide. So I will be briefly running through the 16 divisions of the master list of the construction specification master list. Hindi lahat ng items or division ay applicable sa specifications ng isang project. Therefore, when you do your specification, it is best that you simultaneously do it with your bill of estimates para habang ini-edit mo yung material specification mo, nag-update ka rin ng bill of estimates. So, kunwari, ang costing mo for Division 1 ang costing mo for Division 1 sa Bill of Estimates, yun din dapat ang Division 1 mo sa specifications para hindi ka nahihirapan na mag-compare. So, this is gonna be your master list. I do suggest for you to remember the 16 divisions, but uh, in real life naman, hindi mo kailangang memorize. I mean, pwede ka namang mag-refer lagi, but it's knowledge that is helpful on site in the professional field. Okay? So daanan lang natin ng mabilis. So Division 1 general requirements, lahat po ito ay administrative mostly. What do I mean by that? So clerical ito, lahat ng paperwork, project summary, price and payment, the contract itself, how the project will proceed. Division 2, site construction. As you can see from the items, earthwork, site preparation, planting, lahat ng may kinalaman sa lupa sa site itself. Division 3, concrete, from the word itself, the material of concrete, reinforcement, precast, grouts, and naka-include dyan yung restorations or cleaning. If your project is rehabilitation or restoration. Division 4, masonry, materials and methods, masonry units, stone, refractories, masonry assembly. So, ganito mo i-divide yung specifications mo para mas madali for the worker, for the client, na tignan yung materials mismo. Next divisions, we have Division 5, metals, specification of materials and methods, structural metal framing, joists, fabrication, ornamental metals, if any, and expansion control. Division 6 would include wood and plastics, materials and methods, carpentry, finishing, or architectural woodwork, structural plastics, and plastic fabrications. Now, do not be confused kapag sinabing carpentry sa Division 6 because that will not include your doors and windows because that's on another division. So Division 7, proceed tayo, is moisture and thermal protection. I'm sorry if medyo mabilis tong part na to, pero kasi it's self-explanatory. So, kada division, kung meron kang item or material na ilalagay sa building mo, sa project mo, hahanapin mo kung saan division mo siya ilalagay. So, these are only some of the items na pwedeng included sa division na yon, pero hindi limited to these items. Okay? Malinaw tayo doon na hindi ito yung limitation. These are only examples of what you can put, what you should put for each division. Moving on, Division 8, this is what I was saying kanina, doors and windows. There's a specific division for your doors and windows in terms of specifications. So, Division 8 would include that, your doors and frames, specialty doors, entrances and storefronts. If you have windows, skylights, glazing, and curtain walls in your project, include that in this division also. And of course, the hardware, yung mga hinges nyo, for a doorknob sa division na ito po papasok. Next set of divisions, you have Division 9, finishes. Dito po nagfo-focus usually ang architect, especially if very particular ka with how your interior would turn out. Division 9 finishes includes but is not limited to materials and methods, support assemblies, plaster and gypsum board, tiles, terrazzo, ceilings, floorings, wall finishes, acoustical treatments, and of course, paint and coatings. As you can see, itong Division 9 is where the heart, for me the heart of the design happens because ito yung tangible talaga sa kliyente. Ito yung nakikita niya, pintura, tile, ceiling, yan yung nakikita niya eh. Division 10 would include specialties. So as you can see from the list, These are partner professionals na pwedeng itap ni contractor sa kanyang project. Division 11 is equipment, maintenance equipment, security and vault, teller and service. Also, fields that can be tapped additionally by the contractor. So usually, ang nangyayari dito, yung specifications ng equipment, specialties, kinukuha from the supplier or the subcontractor, tas ipapasok na lang ni architect sa specifications niya, sa construction specifications niya. And then division 12 is furnishing anything that moves. Fabrics, art, furniture, interior plants, and planters for the plantito, plantita. So from the word itself, self-explanatory, furnishing. Next set of divisions, you have division 13, special construction. So from the list, you can see special talaga. These are usually hindi sakop ng general contractor but a specialized contractor. For example, aquariums, tubs, pools, ice rinks, building automation and control, detection and alarm, fire suppression. Meron usually subcon na mas expertise niya yung ganitong part. So, you have to get the details, the specifications and details from them, and then pasok mo dyan sa specifications mo, sa construction specifications mo. Because at the end of the day, ikaw yung in charge as architect sa lahat ng material at sa pag-oversee na tama yung ini-install at yung way ng pang-install. So, ikaw ang mag-a-approve ng specifications na to. Division 14, conveying systems, which would include dumbwaiters, elevators, escalators, lifts, hoists, cables, scaffolding. So, ways of conveying. From the word itself din talaga eh. Division 15, mechanical, which include service piping, fire protection, plumbing fixture, HVAC, refrigeration. And the last division, I'm sorry if mabilis, pero I'm pretty sure naman by this time, bored na kayo with the slides. That's why fina-fast pace ko lang. Division 16 is electrical. So, materials and methods, wiring methods, electrical power, transmission, lighting, communications, sound, and video. The good thing about sticking to this normal division of specification is that, yung sinabi ko nga kanina, it is a universal standard. Everyone in the construction industry would be familiar at hindi na sila mahihirapan magkalkal at maghanap ng material at mag-read through your specifications. Sticking to these divisions also make it easier for you to estimate the project cost because tracking of materials and methods for one is organized. So, kung ganito na yung na-start mo na building specification at saka estimate, then stick with it. I mean, it's gonna be easier than having anong tawag dito, yung all over the place, kunwari, nagsusulat ka, ini-specify mo yung hardware. Tapos yung next sentence, ang naka-specify doors and windows, di ba? This standard makes it easier in terms of organization. So again, ang in charge po sa specification, sa construction specification ay si architect. Therefore, kahit na yung ibang division ay galing sa supplier o kaya sa subcon yung specification, ikaw at ikaw ang mag-a-approve niyan. Since 15 years ang liability mo dyan, hindi dapat tinitake na joke ang pag-specify ng materials. I know ang focus natin mostly is the finishes. Well, for me, medyo dun ako nagfo-focus because I specialize in interiors. But as the architect, you are the overall in charge of these specifications. And if mali ang nakalagay, if may nangyari sa building mo, and then ang nahanap nilang mali is dahil hindi tama, for example, ang computation mo sa reinforcement, kahit sa structural yan, damay ka pa din as an architect. So, kailangan pong daanan lagi ang specifications because it is a binding element and also considered part of the contract. Okay, proceed tayo. So, your building technology 1 for this course, for this semester rather, is building materials as what I have been saying. But we will focus according sa syllabus dito sa items na nasa right nyo. So, this includes site preparation, wood, stone, metal, glass, concrete, paint, indigenous materials, and to add to the list, like I mentioned a while ago nga, local or vernacular language, which will go hand in hand with the last topic, which is indigenous materials. So for this lecture, daanan na po natin ng pahapyaw si site preparation or site investigation para it's one thing off our list. Total, maikli pa naman yung lecture. So next slide. This slide focuses on site investigation. Before any design is made, the architect is required to get as much valuable data about the site and the building erection at the project site in order to determine the character of the materials which will be encountered at the level of the foundation bed. So, paano mo malalaman kung ano ang mai-encounter mo dun sa site at kung ano ang possible na itayo mo if hindi ka familiar dun sa site mismo at saka dun sa lupa na pagtatayuan mo, 'di ba? Therefore, these are some of the methods of exploration um, we normally use. Number one, test pits. For shallow work, as in pag mababaw lang na trabaho, for example, ano ba? Trenching, for example. An open pit is the most suitable method because it calls for an actual inspection of the undisturbed material over a considerable area. So, test pit mismo, as in maghuhukay ka, and then look at it. Ganun lang siya. Number two, test borings. For excavation that are carried no deeper than the proposed level, the underlying material may be investigated by test boring. So, lagi nyo itong naririnig, I'm sure. Lagi nyo siyang maririnig. So, boring test, boring test. Boring test is basically what we call the SBT yan. SBT. Meron pong itong part na to, itong soil boring rig, meron siyang parang, hindi parang, meron siyang canister, parang tube na ganito ang shape. And then, ididiin niya yan papunta sa lupa para makahugot ng sample ng lupa. So, what I mean by sample is this one. So, ang mai-extract niyan is yung layers ng lupa na nakuha from the test. So, that ang gagawin diyan, dadalhin yan sa lab and then they're gonna see kung anong composition ng lupa, gaano siya katigas, at what level ba yung max na pwede mong abutin. That's basically it. It's testing the soil. So, boring as in pagdig ng hole. So, it's called soil boring. Loading tests, on the other hand, test the materials forming the foundation bed in terms of its bearing capacity. As in, for example, this is the soil that you wish to test. Very generic lang yung pag-explain ko, hindi masyadong technical because I just want you to be familiar with how how it's gonna be done or what's the purpose of it. So, ang loading test basically is gustong malaman ni architect or ni engineer kung ano ang safe bearing capacity ng lupa. So, gaano bigat ba yung kaya niyang buhatin. Yun lang yung purpose niya. So, ang test na to, maglalagay sila ng dial gauge, tsaka hydraulic jack, tapos ng bearing plate para yung plate yung sasalo ng weight na ipapatong dun sa lupa. And then malalaman kung ano ang bearing capacity ng soil. So that's basically it. Yun lang yun. So the simplest explanation of all, gusto lang malaman, these tests, these methods of exploration would make you and your engineer familiar with the capacity and the property of the lupa. Okay? Excavation and earthworking. These processes entail the following. So, a little run through lang on the terms, the definitions, which you would be likely encountering during construction. Excavation is the process of digging the earth to provide a place for the foundation of the building. So, I'm pretty sure lahat naman kayo familiar with the word na excavation, paghukay. Number two, leveling and grading. These are processes that change land elevation and slope by filling in low spots and shaving off high spots. So, kukuha ka ng lupa from one place, ililipat mo into one place para tumaas yung isa o kaya bumaba yung isa. So, that's leveling and grading. So, binabago mo yung ng grade level and elevation ng lupa. Number three, stabilizing the soil is the process of compacting the soil on which the structure will rest. So, from the word itself, stabilizing the soil. Sorry, from the term itself, stabilizing the soil. And then number four, we have the protection of adjoining structure is a law that provides that any person making an excavation is responsible for resulting damage to adjoining property. This is common sense naman, diba? The reason why we should perform tests on our soil and be familiar with the character and property of our soil is because we are responsible first and foremost to our client and the owners of the adjoining property. So, since tikit-tikit ang buildings natin sa Pilipinas, uh, as professionals, we should protect what we can protect. Not only because these soil tests are required by law, but because we as an individual, ayaw natin ng sakit ng ulo and we should stay true with our sworn profession to protect and safeguard since tayo yung gumagawa. Kailangan our first and foremost na priority is protection. Okay? Next slide. Shoring is a process of temporarily supporting a building or structure with shores or props to prevent the retained soil from overturns or collapse. So, ang definition po ng shoring ay from the image to your right, kita nyo naman, that's one example of shoring. Binoboard up lang po yung hinukay o kaya yung retaining wall para may additional support sa weight at hindi mag-collapse ang wall. Ang kaya siya sinoshoringan. Ayan. I will not be running through detailing through the parts or members of the shoring process kasi nandyan naman na yung definition and it's very straight up. But the most important ones would be your sheet piles, which is, ayan, this one, an example. So, pile. Siya yung nagre-retain sa lupa para hindi mag-slide and sometimes even water in terms of kapag steel yung sheet pile. Next slide. So that's your shoring. Another image of it. Wales are continuous horizontal beams which tie the sheet piles in place. So, ayan. On a on a more detailed drawing, this is your sheet piling. Lagging refers to the heavy timber planks joined together side by side to retain the face of an excavation. So, inulit ko lang yung definition ko kanina. But these are illustrations for you to better understand the shoring process. Basta yun lang yun. Gusto mong tulungan yung wall na hinukay mo o kaya yung wall na mataas na ma-retain niya yung shape niya. Parang hindi siya mag-erode, di siya mag-collapse. So, shoringan mo, shoring. Next, needling and underpinning. This is a process wherein needles or girders are used kapag kunwari, on the image, you need to restore a part of the building na nagkikerry ng load ng building. So, lalagyan mo siya ng needle or a beam na magka-carry temporarily ng weight niya, ng weight ng building to the dead shore or the temporary supports habang inaayos mo yung part na kailangang ayusin. So, that's needling and underpinning. I don't think I need to read the definition, but dewatering is, yon tinatanggalan ng tubig. So, from the existing water table, gusto mong ibaba because gagamitin mo yung site. Gusto mong ibaba yung water table. So, ang gagawin mo dyan, hihigupin from the site yung water. I would just like to run through how elevated or slope surfaces can be treated to minimize damage sa upland and also sa lowland, of course. So, the need for stabilizing a sloping ground can be reduced by diverting the runoff at the top of the slope by creating a series of terraces to reduce the velocity of the runoff. So, self-explanatory, mas mabagal ang daloy ng water o kaya ng lupa if there is a terrain similar to the terraces. So, kapag terrace siya o kaya may curves na ganyan, mas mabagal ang flow ng elements. Number two, natural means of stabilization include soil binders as in plant. This is elementary science na plants hold the soil intact. Therefore, trees are needed in the mountains because their roots bind the soil. So that's one natural means. If you have a project that is in a sloped area, I suggest that you keep the vegetation to a maximum and don't bother the trees. Okay, next slide. Riprap is a layer of irregularly broken and random sized stones placed on the slope of an embankment. So you're familiar with this. Going to Baguio, you see a lot of riprap walls. Under that riprap, there's gonna be a filter fabric or graded sand and gravel that will provide um, the drainage for the slope surface. Number four, cribbing. It's a cellular framework of squared steel, concrete, or timber members assembled in layers at right angles. So ito yung treatment for the OCP people. And cribbing looks something like this. So this is not a local project, but you get the idea. So for this one, this is concrete, if I'm not mistaken. And number five, bin wall. It's very similar to cribbing in a sense that it's very linear by stacking modular interlocking precast concrete units, sometimes steel, and filling the voids with crushed stone or gravel. So, finifill in yung voids ng precast concrete or steel para ma-carry nung modular na yon yung weight ng retaining wall. Next slide. Gabions are galvanized or PVC-coated wire baskets filled with stones and stacked to form an abutment or retaining structure. If you pass through, what is that road? Yung pag nag-left ka pagpapunta kang Santa Barbara and then nag-left ka, yung papuntang Mapandan, there is to your left merong gabion supplier dun eh na yung buong fence niya puro gabion. Basta a gabion is basically imagine a wired cube. So it's a rectangle na wire tapos nilagyan ng mga bato-bato. That's it. Retaining structures. When a desired change in ground elevation is the angle or of repose of the soil, a retaining wall becomes necessary to hold the mass of earth on the uphill side of the grade change. So a retaining wall is basically something we use to retain the soil on its place. It resists the overturning and sliding by the sheer weight and volume of its mass is a gravity retaining wall. So ang gravity retaining wall ah yung weight mismo nung pader, siya yung nag-prevent na mag-turn o mag-collapse yung soil. So, the weight of the wall itself sustains the protection of the slope. A T-type cantilevered retaining wall, however, has a footing. So, yung kanina, yung section niya, kita nyo, yung wall mismo yung makapal at saka mabigat at massive. That's a gravity retaining wall. A T-type cantilevered retaining wall, however, has a footing wherein distributed yung weight niya. So, you have structural steel reinforcement and footing na tumutulong apart from the wall itself to balance out and protect the soil from eroding. And then the last slide, counter fort retaining wall. So yung kanina hindi ko na kasi binasa yung part na yun. And beyond this height, dito po. Beyond this height, a counter fort wall is employed. So if it's above 6 meters na a counter fort is employed, a counter fort is basically an additional wall that has a triangular shape cross walls to stiffen the vertical slab. So basic physics, to resist the force na galing dito, add a structural member. And then you have the L-type cantilevered retaining wall. It's similar to the T-type but it is letter L. So ginagamit to usually if there is obstruction or when the wall abuts a property line. Or yun nga, yung obstruction. So if hindi ko property to, tong part na to, dito lang ako pwedeng mag-build kasi ito lang yung lupa ko, therefore I use it like this. I put it like this, sorry. And for example, hindi ko nga property to, dito lang ang property ko. But I want to protect my side of the property, then I put an L-type cantilevered retaining wall. So these are only some of the slope protection devices and site work and excavation and earthwork stuff that you need to be familiar with in terms of building materials. I know it's very general in a sense, but I've compressed the lecture in a way na kayang intindihin with very minimal na familiarization with site. I know some of you are experienced on site work, but this is a general lecture na kayang intindihin dapat even even for someone with minimal site and construction experience. So, for the next lectures, we will be focusing on the topics I mentioned earlier that is indicated in your syllabus. But please do expect na if you are not if hindi mo forte ang construction, ang building materials, ang specifications, then yes, it is going to be, I'm sorry to say, it's gonna be a boring subject because it really is a boring subject if you're not passionate to learn about it. And also, for me at the end of the day, building technology and building construction subjects will only prepare you, but ang hirap talaga intindihin if hindi mo siya nakikita firsthand. So, I suggest na if you do have the opportunity to expose yourself to the construction industry, go for it. Kasi ang hirap i-explain ng mga to just by lecture, just by drawings, just by these illustrations. It's very different. Hindi mo talaga siya ma-appreciate. But our course, uh, our course outcome expects that you be familiar. So, before ka pumunta sa site, that you are familiar. So, yun lang. Para lang maging familiar ka, tapos kapag nakita mo na-encounter mo na, you'd be like, hey, yun pala yun. Okay? I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, this ends the lecture. I hope you got entertained kahit papano, kahit medyo boring yung subject natin. And I hope to see you on the next one. So, thank you very much for watching and let's have a great semester together. Bye!